This recording of The Dummy, written by Nicholas Royle, appears here with permission from the author. All rights reserved. It is available in the collection The Dummy and Other Uncanny Stories, published by Swan River Press, 2018. See the accompanying description for a website link. Reading by Jeff Clark. The Dummy by Nicholas Royle. The featureless road, the driving rain, white lines, empty fields, the endless rhythm of the stop-go shunt, a Newton's cradle of cars on the motorway heading northwest, the occasional church spire in the distance piercing the dark gray wadding of the clouds. The monotony is relieved by a fizzing spot of fluorescent yellow up ahead. You squint, peer through the windscreen, rub with your sleeve at a stubborn patch of fog on the glass. The view clears. The fluorescent spot grows, elongates, becomes a figure. The motorway narrows for 3 lanes down to 2. The traffic slows accordingly. The man in the high-visibility clothing moves his left arm up and down, telling you to slow down further. He's standing hard by the crash barrier on the central reservation. He's either suicidal or insane or both. There has to be a better way to warn drivers of impending hazards, you think. Sure, he's completely covered in high-vis gear, from the hood of his jacket to the turn-ups of his trousers, but you can't imagine this man's UK counterpart happily standing that close to moving traffic on the M1. Maybe the Belgians pay danger money, or perhaps, as seems likely from the standard of the driving, all Belgians are clinically insane. Admittedly, this may be the birthplace of surrealism, but still. You twist your head for a closer look as you roll past. The planes of his face seem abnormally severe, his skin unnaturally smooth. Do motorway maintenance workers really shave every morning? Tell me where it comes from, this love of our country. Asking the question was a striking young woman of slender build and average height, her irregularly cut mahogany-colored hair framing a face shaped like a warning sign, eyes that glittered, a short, sharp nose pointed like the bill of a goldfinch, lips painted a vivid red. When she leaned forward across the hotel breakfast table, peripheral vision gifted me a view down the front of her top. "What's not to love about it?" I said, careful not to let my eyes drop. "Beer, chocolate, medieval architecture." "In that order?" She flashed her teeth. One was chipped at the corner. Either her lower lip was uneven or she twisted it unconsciously while she spoke. I remember reading somewhere that beauty was all down to symmetry. I'd thought it was rubbish at the time, and now here was proof. "Definitely." "No, but," she started, signaling the switch to serious interview mode by picking up a sachet of sugar and turning it end on the tablecloth. "The Eddie de Groot novels are bestsellers. You're not telling me his creator is inspired by nothing more than a desire to sit drinking Duvel at pavement cafes in the Grote Markt, with a view of the Stadhuis." "Exactly." "No. In fact, just between you and me," I said, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "I don't actually like Duvel." She sat back, eyes wide. I know, I said, hands in the air. "The man who didn't like Duvel. I don't like triples either. I like blonde beers. I've always been partial to blondes." I gave her my winning grin. "Only blondes?" she asked, sitting forward again. "As you probably know if you've read the books, I like the brown beers best." My eyes flicked down momentarily. Westmalle, Ename, Chimay, but only the red or the blue. Around us, hotel staff were discreetly clearing tables. "So, Eddie de Groot, your Flemish detective, is you?" she asked, bending the sugar sachet in half. "It's easier than making stuff up." "Your alter ego?" "If you like. All I know is he's not Poirot and he's not Maigret, but he's not Van der Valk either. I saw a gap in the market for a Dutch-speaking Belgian detective, written by an Englishman. Now it was my turn to sit back in my chair. I took my eyes off her for a moment and looked around the breakfast room. She had described my Eddie de Groot novels as bestsellers, which, of course, they weren't, not in the UK, but they did okay in Dutch translation. In addition, they probably sold as many English copies here in Belgium and in Holland as they did back home. There were that many English speakers in the Low Countries. In any case, the figures obviously added up, or I wouldn't get this treatment. 5-star hotel, a reading slot at the Antwerp Festival, a round of interviews with local and national media. The girl with the sexy mouth had come up from Brussels to do a piece for De Standaard. I wasn't kidding myself it was going to last forever, but I might as well enjoy it while I could. It goes back to when I was a kid, I said, leaning forward and taking the sachet of sugar from her hand. My dad used to bring me stamps off the ships. He was a customs officer and he used to rummage ships in the docks and bring me back stamps for my collection. The ones I liked best were the Belgian stamps, the picture of King Baudouin, the different colors, pink, blue, green, brown, and gray. I liked the way the colors changed, but the image remained the same. I wanted to own the whole set. I like having whole sets of things. Belgian stamps, Agatha Christie novels, Fontana paperbacks with the Tom Adams covers, no others. I toyed with the sugar sachet and shrugged my shoulders. It's a man thing. I watched her check the digital voice recorder. When's your deadline? I asked. Do you have to go away and write this up this morning? I've got till tomorrow lunchtime, she said. So what do you say we do this over lunch? I held my breath and caught her looking at my wedding ring. I said nothing. She smiled. Rain falls without end from a sky made of lead. Your eyes are gritty. Your head lolls momentarily over the wheel. Micro-sleep. You exit the motorway, pull over, rub your face, get out, walk up and down. Fresh air, pouring rain. Get back in the car, sit there looking out at the rain. You get your phone out of your pocket and stare at it. You check that you haven't missed any calls or texts. You haven't. You remember the time you spent 10 minutes going all over the house looking for the phone while talking on what you thought was the cordless landline. You even told the person you were talking to that you were looking for your mobile. This wasn't so long ago. You told your wife about it, hoping she would find it funny. She shook her head and said, "It's a bit early even for you, isn't it?" You had had a drink, as it happened, but nothing more than that. You wondered if she had a point, and you decided she may well have done, but that it was disappointing all the same, that she didn't just laugh about it, and then perhaps everything would have been all right. It's a long time since everything has been all right. You go to the messages on your phone and reread the last text she sent. There's no real need. There are no fresh insights to be gained. You're just tormenting yourself. You put the phone back into your pocket and turn the key in the ignition. More rain, more flat fields, gray streets with occasional brick houses, shuttered, stark. More traffic cones, roadworks, another flash of fluorescent yellow. But the perspective's all wrong. It looks like he's lying down. You lean forward over the wheel, screwing up your eyes. He is lying down. Pull over. Stop. Get out. Jacket over your head. Bend down. His hood over his face. Limbs at weird angles as if he's been knocked down. Hit and run. You pull the hood back a little. Jump. The face isn't real. The rain doesn't roll off it in quite the right way. But the arms and legs look right. The torso is reassuringly bulky. You touch the leg. It's a real leg. You'd put money on it being a real leg. You haven't had a drink yet today. You squeeze harder. Maybe you're wrong. You look at the face again. Is it a mask? You remember the man on the tube, the blind man with the rubber eye mask. 2 unblinking eyes painted onto a rubber mask held in place with elastic behind a pair of useless glasses. When you sat opposite, you stared at him so hard you ended up having to look away because you became convinced he could see you doing it. Somehow. When you took a photograph of him through a crowd on the platform and showed it to your wife, she called you a sick fuck, but only after making sure the children were not in the room. You took your camera with you when you went to say goodnight to the children, because you wanted to show that picture to them. You thought they'd get it, but they were both already asleep, their hands clenched into tiny fists, mouths slightly open, the infinitesimal rise and fall of the chest. You bent right down over their beds until you could feel their breath on your cheek, the faintly sour smell. You would never stop loving them, you told yourself, no matter what they did. Yes, you'd lose your temper with them and yell at them, and afterwards you would feel bad because the anger melted away, leaving only the love behind. You couldn't imagine life without them. Sometimes you'd sit and watch them breathe, sitting with one and then the other, until your wife would call you. "I thought you'd gone to the pub," she would say when you went downstairs. "No," you'd say, and you'd look into her eyes and see if it was still there, the glimmer in her eyes that had drawn you to her, 12 years ago? 13? It had lost some of its candle power, perhaps, but it was still there. And so you'd hold her and you'd hug each other tightly, and you'd say you loved her and you hoped she'd be patient with you, and she'd say nothing, but nor would she let go of you. You try to loosen the collar on the shirt, just in case. The neck looks no more realistic than the face close up. You look up, look around. There's no one. The nearest buildings are some distance away. There's no traffic. You gather the dummy's legs and thread your arm under his back, taking care to support the head with your upper arm. He's lighter than a fully grown man, heavier than either of your children. You carry him the few yards back to the car and manage to open the passenger door. Your heart is beating fast and the blood vessels in your head are throbbing. You position his legs in the footwell, and once you've got the seatbelt around him, he sits up okay. His head hangs forward just a little. You check your mirrors. There's a car in the wing mirror, far enough away for its driver not to have seen anything. In any case, your car would have acted as a shield. The other car now drives past without slowing down. You wait for the ringing in your head from the hiss of the tires on the wet road surface to die down, and then you pull out and drive on. I took her to the Entrepot du Congo for lunch, and between us we got through so many Rodenbachs, neither of us thought it was a bad idea when I suggested we carry on the interview back at my hotel. Of course, when we got back there, the lobby area was busy, and returning to the breakfast room didn't feel like an attractive option. So although I know I could have asked the concierge for conference facilities, it just seemed easier to head upstairs to my room. We did finish the interview, but let's just say it took a while to get started on the afternoon session. Hilda said it was the first interview she'd conducted in which both parties were completely naked. "Both parties?" I said. She smiled. We could have perhaps left it at that and not gone on and ruined everything. But during the time we spent in my room there were moments of tenderness, interludes when we lay side by side catching our breath, gazing into each other's eyes like lovers. Most of the time, admittedly, it felt like a one-night stand, but there were moments when it didn't. And there was a mutual reluctance to part once we were dressed and Hilda said the batteries on her digital recorder were exhausted but that it didn't matter because she'd already gotten far more material than she could use. Somehow we ended up at a bar not far from the hotel drinking shots. I switched my phone back on to see that my wife had been trying to get hold of me. Instead of calling her back, I ordered another round of drinks and heard myself answering Hilda's question about the origins of my love of Belgium in greater depth. "It wasn't just the stamps," I said. "Well, it was, but it wasn't just the stamps per se. It was what they symbolized. They were like the equivalent British stamps, different colors, monarch's head. We had a queen, you had a king. I couldn't get my head around how strange it must be to have a king rather than a queen. I knocked back another shot and was about to order more, but checked myself and ordered 2 dark beers instead. "We should drink them slowly," I said. Here was this country, I went on, just across the channel from us. A small country, a monarchy. In a way it was a mirror image of Britain. As I grew up, I imagined that it was like a parallel world to the one in which I lived. Red light struck one side of her face, blue the other. I felt a compulsion to open up to her completely, to tell her everything about myself. In turn, I wanted to know everything there was to know about her. I took out my wallet and withdrew the battered picture of my kids that went everywhere with me. "Jack and May," I said. She grinned and tossed her hair back and asked me how old they were. I told her 8 and 6, but that the photograph was a year old. She handed it back, and as I slipped it into my wallet, I fell into a sort of fugue. I couldn't work out why. Eventually, I wondered if it was because she'd been happy to see a picture of my children. If she was happy that I had kids, did that mean she would also be happy when I went home to them, which I both did and didn't want to do? You went home, of course, but it was clear, not to them but to your wife, that something was up. You can't dissemble, can't hide the truth. You said nothing, but within a week you were back in Belgium. Another book to research, you said, next in the series. You stayed with Hilda. She was single, even if you weren't. You scrapped a planned de Groot novel and started a new one. He'd fallen in love with a journalist. His job was on the line, his life falling apart. De Groot's wife was suspicious. Yours, too. It wasn't as if she read your work in progress, not normally, but accessing your backups remotely on your iDisk was beyond neither her imagination nor her technical know-how. Getting the password right was the easy part, since you had never had any secrets. The drink and drug habits had never been kept from her. How could they be? Their effects were written all over your face and bank statements. When you got home, your wife confronted you and you broke down and confessed. You sat at the kitchen table and looked out of the window while she threw crockery, wedding presents, at the wall. In the garden, perched on the handrail that runs around the outside of the deck area, was a small green bird, a greenfinch, seemingly completely oblivious to the mayhem taking place only a few feet away. You watched that bird, its tiny head shifting position in jerky increments, and were filled with a vague longing. If you could have put your feelings into words, you would perhaps have said that you wanted to swap places with the bird, that you wanted your spirit or your soul to escape from your own body like smoke and drift under the kitchen door and then enter the greenfinch, which you would henceforth, in some strange incomprehensible way, become. Do you even believe in a spirit or a soul, or is there nothing but a mind, a consciousness, a sense of identity? You see a sign for West Vleteren and leave the main road. Some say West Vleteren 12 is the best beer in the world, and you would not disagree. None of the 3 West Vleteren beers can be bought anywhere other than direct from the West Vleteren Abbey Brewery. You've heard they even require you to have an appointment, but if you turn up and say, "Give me an appointment in 5 minutes' time," what are they going to do? Turn you away? Or sell you some of the best beer in the world? You see his yellow jacket out of the corner of your eye and it startles you. You'd forgotten he was there, sitting right next to you, steam rising off him. His raised hood conceals his profile. Didn't you lower his hood? You must have raised it again, either deliberately or accidentally, while getting him into the car. You keep driving, although the signs to West Vleteren have disappeared. There was a village or a hamlet, a settlement, 3 or 4 buildings, all shuttered, no gardens, brick fronts hard by the road, but no crossroads, no turnings, unless you missed one while sneaking a look at your passenger. Here's something on the left. You slow down. A walled enclosure, carefully cut grass, regular lines of white headstones, identical black lettering on each. You accelerate slowly as if out of respect. There is no let-up in the rain. At the next turning you go left. The windscreen wipers sound like a heartbeat. A Coca-Cola sign shimmers out of the gloom on the right-hand side of the road. You pull over and stop. Some kind of cafe. Step out of the car and lock it, then look back in and hesitate, the rain drumming on your shoulders and the back of your neck, before unlocking it and turning to walk towards the cafe. I took the Eurostar back to Brussels and jumped in a cab. We spent the afternoon in Hilda's flat on Avenue Emile Max. When I finally looked out of the window, I saw a flash of green as a bird the size of a jackdaw, but much more streamlined with pointed wings and a long tail, swooped down into the garden and then climbed back up from its dive just as quickly, like a BMXer on a ramp. I knew instantly what the bird was. "Look," I said to Hilda, "a ring-necked parakeet. They become common in London, apparently, though I've never seen one. I had to come to Brussels to see my first one. It's an omen." She asked me what had happened in London. "She told me to fuck off," I said, and straight away, as a shadow seemed to pass across her face, I knew it was a strategic error. You don't tell your lover that your wife has kicked you out. It doesn't matter that you may have talked about the possibility. When it happens, you say nothing, unless what you want to end up with is precisely that. Nothing. We went out to a bar in Schaerbeek where a friend of Hilda's was celebrating a birthday. I drank steadily as I watched Hilda drinking and sitting with her arms around a succession of people, male and female, all of them younger than me, as she was herself, of course, and I started to feel obscurely sad. Self-pity pricked at my eyes as I turned to look out of the window and thought about Jack and May, and Sarah, my wife. I left the bar and walked in a random direction. Before long I realized I had entered the red light district by the Gare du Nord, and I went into the next bar I came to. Pinewood paneling covered the walls. I ordered an Orval because it appeared to be the only beer they had. I detest Orval, so I drank it quickly and ordered another, and then another. It was dark when I left the bar. Red, blue, and ultraviolet lights slid past me in a sickening blur. When I somehow found my way back to Avenue Emile Max, I waited outside Hilda's building until someone came out. The door to her flat gave easily enough without causing too much damage, but I really was past caring. While I was blundering around inside looking for her car keys, I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket. A text message. "You don't like Jupiler any more than Orval, but when it's all they've got, you'll swallow it. 3 small bottles. Take the edge off. A fat man sits at a till. You give him a handful of coins and go on through into a long, narrow room filled with dusty display cases containing scraps of battle dress, a scabbard, a German helmet. Strange wooden boxes squat on tables. You put your eye to the eyepiece and twist the knob to change the photograph being viewed. Some optical trickery inside the box creates a 3D effect. Pictures of terrible wounds and corpses alternate with photographs of advancing columns of soldiers. The atrocity exhibition with slot machines. Somehow, their being in black and white makes it worse, but after a while the pictures no longer shock. You become inured to the horror. At the far end of the room, a doorway leads outside. You follow a path into a field dotted with trees and lined, you now see, with passageways dug into the earth. Trenches. You remember the cemetery filled with war dead. Are these real trenches or some sick replica, a theme park dug by the fat man, or that the fat man had dug for him? From what you know of Belgium, it would not surprise you at all to learn that these are the real thing. In another country, this would be a monument. Here, it's a disgrace. You'd almost rather it were the fat man's plaything, that just one man was to blame instead of a federal state for failing to honor the sacrifice of others. You half clamber, half slip down into one of the trenches, and it's all you can do to remain on your feet in the mud. You feel a damp sensation on the left side of your chest, something trickling, sweat from all the exertion. You feel like a ghoul. Time to leave. You collapse in the driver's seat, turn to look at your passenger. "Weird place," you say. and wait for a response. Suit yourself. Let's go. You realize you've not taken your coat off and Hilda's car will now be covered in mud. Too bad, you say. She should have thought of that. And you laugh. You know you shouldn't be driving, but you don't care. You can feel that wet sensation on the left side of your chest again. Still sweating? You look down, tugging at your coat. There's blood. Quite a lot of blood. Stop the car. Pull at your t-shirt, covered in blood. There's a big hole in your chest, fist-sized, as if something has been torn out of you. You bend over to look more closely, tentatively insert the tips of your fingers. Your hand slowly falls away and you look up through the windscreen at the ever-falling rain. The only sound you can hear, apart from the rattling of the rain, to which you have become so accustomed you don't notice it anymore, is the ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum of the wipers. The text said she had taken the kids and gone. I could come back, she said, but they wouldn't be there. I'd be coming back to an empty house. It wasn't like she was kidnapping them and I'd never see them again. They'd be going to school as normal and I could hang around the school gate. But I wouldn't get to be with them properly. I could fight it, but I knew I didn't have a hope. It was a long text. I got in Hilda's car and drove out of Brussels, heading northwest towards the coast. Not that I had any kind of plan. It was already late and dark, and the combination of alcohol, tiredness, and the constant rain meant I had to stop. I found a DIY superstore with a large car park on the outskirts of Ghent. I parked by the wall facing the exit and slept on the back seat. In the morning, I went in search of food, then sat in the car while waiting for the DIY store to open. I went in, got what I wanted, and returned to the car with it coiled in a plastic bag, which I put in the boot. I then drove on with no fixed destination in mind. There was a pain in my chest, from having slept badly, I presumed. You drive until you reach the coast. Still it rains. The first cheap hotel you see, you leave the car and carry the dummy in over your shoulder. The woman gives you a twin room. You lay him on one of the beds and you take the other, kicking off your shoes. You turn and turn, but sleep won't come. You get up and gently move him along a little so that you can get on the same bed, facing away from him. You lie absolutely still, listening, but all you can hear is the rain hitting the window. You turn to face him. There are raindrops on his yellow jacket. You pull the jacket to one side and rest your head on his chest. After a few moments, you realize you can hear a noise like the windscreen wipers, and you wonder if it's a kind of hypnagogic auditory hallucination or if it's the pulse in your temple. You wake up in the original position you had occupied on the shared bed, facing away from him. A thin gray light from the window reveals large brown flowers on the wallpaper. You turn over and look at him. His face looks the same, smooth, unlined, eyes open. On his chest, a line of stitching provides a point of detail on the otherwise featureless dark fabric that covers his frame and padding. Remembering the last thing that happened before you fell asleep, you press your ear to his chest. It's faint, but still there. But again, it could be the blood in your own head, or it could be autosuggestion. You go into the bathroom and run the shower. When you come out, I'm sitting up on the edge of the bed staring at the floor. Shall we go? You drive along the coast towards Zeebrugge. What did you buy from the DIY store? My voice is flat, affectless. I think you know. We take a ferry to England and are then faced with a long drive to London. By the time we reach the M25, it's late. In Upper Holloway, you park Hilda's car outside the kids' school. It's a very short walk to your house. I follow you up the path. The house is in darkness. The kids' rooms are empty, their cupboards and drawers bare. You offer me your bedroom and say you're going to sleep in your son's room. In the morning, you look in on me, your face blank, and you say goodbye before going downstairs. I hear the chink of a glass as a drink is poured, then another, and finally the sound of the front door. I get up and watch from the window as you cross the street. You open the boot of the car and look inside. The plastic bag from the DIY store is still sitting there. You close the boot, then open the driver's door and get in. I feel a tiny stabbing pain on the left side of my chest as I think about what might be in that bag and what it could be used for. It's not long before the street becomes busy with parents dropping off their kids, some on foot, others by car. I watch you watching the street and the school gate. A large black car stops in the middle of the road and 2 children get out, a boy and a girl. The black car moves off and you get out of Hilda's car and call them. They stop and look at each other, then run towards you and I see you holding them close to you. A short conversation takes place and you open the rear door of the car and they look at each other again before getting in. You start the engine and pull out of the parking space. As you move off down the street, I have a last glimpse of the children sitting in the back seat, their heads nodding with the movement of the car. When you reach the end of the street, you turn left. How far will you go before you stop and open the boot? The outskirts of London? Somewhere more remote? It's usually somewhere remote.